Today I want to focus on negative self-talk. Our minds are powerful, and the way we speak to ourselves can shape our reality and our actions. This means it can shape our relationship with food and how we live a healthy lifestyle. So self-talk is really important. It can really get in the way of choosing between an apple and a donut. Faced with that choice, you want to say something like this: donuts taste great, but they make me feel yucky later, so I'll choose the apple. When you're first starting to get to grips with healthy eating, it's very unlikely that this is what you'll think. You're more likely to think something like, what's the point? I always give in the end. Or maybe, no one cares what I look like, so I might as well eat it and get fat. Or, I'm so weak-willed. Or, it's all just too difficult. I may not have got what you think exactly right, but it's likely to be something that doesn't help you make good choices. Now, if you look at a lot of advice about self-talk, it comes down to trying to suppress it, to be critical of yourself, to be the jailer of your own thoughts. But that means that the unhelpful voice in your head has changed to a hypercritical, always vigilant voice instead. Is this progress? This voice is constantly waiting, listening. Oh, there I go again. I've got to stop this. And that can be successful to some extent, but it's very stressful, always being hypervigilant, always waiting. It also, of course, means you're thinking negative thoughts about yourself. That isn't helpful in the long run. Thank goodness there are better ways of dealing with this negative voice. There are ways that are kinder to yourself and more effective. So let's have a look at those. I'm going to look at 3 different strategies. The first one is called 4 magic words. The second one is investigating your thoughts. And the third one is naming negative thoughts. I think that at least one of these will work for you. As I'm talking, I think you'll find a particular strategy that resonates with you, that you think, yes, I could do that. That would work for me. As I'm talking, I hope you'll be listening to the different strategies and trying to see which one would be most effective for you. First of all, we're going to look at 4 magic words. This is a very deceptively simple strategy. It comes from a guy called T. Harv Eker, who's a coach for personal and business development. This is what he says: when you catch your negative self-talk, you say to yourself 4 magic words. The magic words are, thank you for sharing. 4 very simple words. Thank you for sharing. He's saying that you need to do it kindly. You are not being sarcastic or critical. Remember, you're speaking to your bodyguard, your over-worrying mother, the small child who was bullied or slapped down. So be gentle. Don't be aggressive or critical of what you're thinking. Just realize this part of you is doing its best to protect you in a dangerous world. Just because it's doing its best, it doesn't mean it's telling you the truth. I'm going to repeat that again. Just because it's doing its best, it doesn't mean it's telling you the truth. Sometimes these thoughts might have been very useful at a particular time in your life, but it doesn't mean they are useful now. In fact, they're very unlikely to be useful now because your circumstances have changed from when that self-talk first started, which is often when you were a child. You are in a much more powerful place than when you were a small child. So the negative self-talk that was appropriate, that kept you safe, kept you out of danger as a small child, may no longer be appropriate. In fact, for some people, it never was appropriate. In order to fit in with your family, maybe you had to accept that you were the weak-willed, impulsive one. Maybe you heard over and over again that you were always the one who ate everything that was put in front of you and was always greedy. I could go on and on with other examples, but I think you get the point. But remember, you're not trying to press it down or blot it out. You're not getting angry. You're just simply saying, thank you for sharing. It's simple, but it can be highly effective. Give it a go. The second strategy is investigating your thoughts. Professor Judson Brewer is a neuroscientist, and he has done a lot of work around anxiety and self-talk. He says, don't push the negative thoughts away. Ask yourself questions such as, where does this come from? What does my body feel like when I have this thought? Concentrate on investigating your thoughts rather than reacting to them. Be curious, be interested in your thought patterns. Don't try to beat them down. Professor Brewer says, in the end, it's not so much about killing our thoughts as it is about investigating them until they lose their power, and they often stop coming on their own. Let me give you an example. Say you often find yourself saying, I'm useless, I have no self-control. You ask yourself where this thought comes from. It may be parents, siblings, a teacher, or friends. Was it a chance remark, or was it said often to you? Next, what does my body feel like when I experience that thought? Okay, so my body feels heavy, I feel stuck, unable to move forward. Do I have any evidence that this thought isn't true? Remember, these repetitive thoughts aren't necessarily correct, so it's important to do that step. This isn't necessarily a quick process. I've only sketched an outline of how you might approach it, nor is it done once and fixed. You'll need to revisit a persistent negative thought. You'll need to keep doing it until it loses its power. So that's 2 approaches so far, 4 magic words and investigating your thoughts to death, basically. Now we're going to look at naming negative thoughts. Naming negative thoughts can be counterproductive, but I'm going to teach you how to use this in a productive way. Bob Stahel, writing on mindful.org, identifies 4 types of self-talk: catastrophizing, blaming, rehashing, rehearsing. Let's look at catastrophizing. This is where you think about the worst case scenario. You often exaggerate the effect of this one small action. For example, if I eat this cake, I'll never get into that dress. If I keep eating unhealthy food, my kids will grow up to eat unhealthy food. If I don't eat the same as my friends in the restaurant, they'll think I'm weird and they'll stop speaking to me. Put like this, these all seem laughable and absurd. But when you're in the midst of catastrophizing, normal reality can be a long way away. The second type of self-talk is blaming yourself, or it can be blaming someone else. I can't trust myself around food. I always make bad choices and regret it later. Why did I even buy those snacks? I always end up binging on them and sabotaging my diet. I'm totally useless with no willpower. Why does my husband always buy me wine? He knows I can't stop at 1 glass. Remember, the examples I'm giving you aren't necessarily what you say to yourself. You have to look at what you say to yourself. They're there to help you understand the process. There are all sorts of ways you can blame yourself. You can also blame other people too, or instead. But blaming other people is highly unproductive because it builds resentment and doesn't give you a way to make things different. It makes you feel powerless. Rehashing is the third option. Rehashing is going over things that happened again and again. For example, if I'd done that differently, that would have been different. Why did I do it that way? This is where you're going back over old episodes. You may be asking yourself questions, but not waiting for the answer. Or are you just moving straight on to the next rehashing question? The fourth type is rehearsing. This is going over something in the future and all the different ways it can unfold, usually wrongly. I'm going to that party and I know there'll be lots of wine and chocolate. I know they give me migraine, but I won't be able to resist. So 4 types of negative thoughts. Bob Stahel recommends you look at your negative self-talk and decide which category it fits into. Catastrophizing, blaming, rehashing, rehearsing. Now, there's a purpose in naming them. What he says is labeling certain categories of thought widens the space between awareness and the thoughts themselves. In that space is where your choice and freedom lie. You can say, oh, there I go catastrophizing again, or there I go rehearsing again. But say it kindly to yourself. If you start to beat yourself up about it, then this becomes a very negative exercise, and that's not the purpose of this. Notice he's not suggesting you're trying to shut up the self-talk. In fact, none of the options I've talked about today are talking about how to suppress self-talk, how to overrule self-talk. They're all looking at being kind to yourself as the best way to deal with self-talk. Instead, be curious. Look at what type of self-talk it is. Look at what category it falls into. You give it a label. Now, if you don't find Bob's categories useful, you might like to use other labels for yourself. You're in a way a disinterested researcher of your own thoughts, not someone trying to lash your thoughts into shape, ending up with even more negativity when inevitably you will fail. This isn't about being harsh on yourself. It's not about being judgmental. It's about being kind to yourself. Just labeling your thoughts to give you some distance. So we've got 3 strategies for self-talk. 4 magic words. Thank you for sharing. Secondly, investigating your thoughts, being aware of how your body is, how you feel, where the thoughts originate, what's the connection from it. Being a sort of researcher of your thoughts. And the third idea of categorizing your negative thoughts to create some distance. Which strategy do you think would be best for you, at least initially? Remember, this isn't a quick fix. You may need to do it many times, particularly if a repetitive thought has been with you since your childhood.